Hello, my name's Keith. I'm one of the founders of Look What We Found, who produce a range of ready meals, soups and sauces. Look What We Found was our voyage of discovery, where we went about trying to find passionate producers and farmers of great ingredients. We also went about to find a cooking process that was traditional yet unique, which would make best use of those ingredients. And we also found some very unusual recipes that were wholesome yet tasty. And we put all this together with one objective, and that was to make great tasting food. Today I'd like to introduce you to our free-range chicken supplier, Alec Mercer, who has a truly remarkable story. Over to you, Alex.
Welcome to Lower Farm, outside the village of Barton under Needwood, in the heart of rural Staffordshire. I'm Alec Mercer and this is my free-range chicken farm. My family have been farming in the area for 4 generations and I'm the first one to do free-range chickens. My brother rears free-range pork and I find that lots of people produce welfare-friendly beef, pork, lamb, but I wanted to do something different, and as a result I've just set up a free-range chicken farm which produces very high welfare, environmentally sustainable chicken. Here we are in a wheat field which we'll be combining shortly. The straw which is generated from this wheat field we'll then bale and use ourselves in our sheds for our chickens, and the grain which is produced we'll then sell to the feed mill and buy back in the form of chicken feed. This is all to try and create a closed loop by which the land provides for the chickens, the chicken muck is then taken out of the chicken sheds, put back on this land, which then creates more feed, more straw, and as a result we have a sort of closed loop. So the farm, there's a centre section there where we keep the birds to brood in when we get them at a day old, and we keep them there for 3 weeks. After 3 weeks we'll then take them to the outside sections where they're then each batch is in its own individual field in small groups, and they'll stay there for 5 weeks. We're now in the brooder yard where we get the birds in at a day old. They'll stay in this section for 3 weeks until they've grown up enough to be able to withstand the outside elements. We get them in on a Monday, and inside here there'll be a controlled environment with about 30 degrees temperature. We get the birds in at 1 day old and they'll be put inside this shed which has got clean bedding, fresh water, good food, and the temperature of the sheds is in controlled environment, so it's actually 30 degrees inside here. As the birds get bigger we'll drop the temperature down and the birds will be able to generate more heat themselves. When they're 3 weeks old we'll then move all these sheds. This whole shed will then be split up into the 3 sheds you'll see out in the field. And from there we'll then start opening the pop holes when they're big enough to be able to withstand the elements. They've left the brooder yard, which they were there for 3 weeks, and they then come here where they'll stay for the next 5 weeks. The one shed I showed you before where the chicks were very small, that shed's now been split into 3 in one field, so that batch has 1 field to go in with 3 sheds, all the same as this, nearby, so they can go into each shed as they see fit. But what's unique about this farm as to all conventional farms is that no antibiotics are given to the chickens whatsoever. Now in a normal conventional system, antibiotics will be given to a chicken throughout its entire life except for the last 5 days of its life. We don't have any antibiotics on this farm at all. The birds come to us at a day old and we give them a vaccination at 4 days old, which is just given through the water, and they're completely left to it. There's no antibiotics used at all, no growth promoters, growth hormones, anything like that. We've moved these sheds routinely around the field, so by the time these sheds are next in this position here, should be sort of 2 years down the line, which means we've got time to reseed it with grass, let the grass grow, let the sheep graze it, etc, etc. So by the time these sheds are next on this particular patch of grass, the field will be completely clean and ready to take them again. See, we've got these shelters in the middle again, as well as some logs which they use to climb on, rest behind, or whatever really. But essentially the whole farm is about trying to give the chickens the options to do what they want to do. During daylight hours, they're allowed outside. They've got the choice of being outside or inside. The key to the whole farm is making sure they can make their choices. If they're inside, which they have to be at night, making sure they've got enough space so they can still show their natural behaviour and do what they naturally would like to do. You can see here that the chickens enjoy being near a tree. They find it offers quite good shelter for them. They feel very comfortable here, very relaxed, and again they're able to grow and have their life as they want it to be, which essentially means it's a stress-free life, which then affects the meat quality in a positive way. When I started the farm, I was convinced that consumers were becoming more knowledgeable, more educated and more aware of how food was being produced, and they were becoming more concerned about that, and they wanted to make sure that what they were buying was ethical, welfare friendly and to the highest of standards. And that's very much the stall I've set out on the chickens here. I want to be at the top end of what we're doing on the chicken farm. If it's not going to be the best quality chicken at the end of the day, I'm not interested in producing it. Inside a typical shed now, we've got the water on one side and the food on the other. We've deliberately spaced these apart. These are about 4 metres apart. In a normal conventional system, food and water will be within a metre of every single chicken. And I suppose the theory there is that that chicken wants to stay in that metre squared. We actually want the birds to range as much as possible, get them using their leg muscles, try and increase that leg strength, increase the flavour of the meat. And as a result, we've placed the food and water 4 metres apart, which means that obviously the birds have to go to each of them all throughout the day. We also have these bales and this perch here down the middle of the shed. This again encourages the birds. They can jump up on it, they can be down. It just gives them options so they always entertain, they can keep themselves busy. And again, it's about trying to give the chickens the correct environment so that they can do what they feel comfortable with. You're not forcing them to eat food, drink water to get bigger and bigger, you're just leaving them to it. As a result, these birds grow a lot slower than what a normal set of chickens would do, and as a result it takes a lot longer for us to get to the weight we need them to be. When people think of free range, they like to think of someone going around a farmyard and scattering some grain on the ground and it's all very twee and very nice. That's sort of unrealistic, but what I'm trying to do is to try and get a commercial element to it where we can do some numbers, but at the same time not losing touch of that. I don't want to have free range chickens which are in a shed of 40,000 and you're completely removed from that image. I like the fact that we're on a farmyard, we've got all different age groups of birds here, and I want it to be the best thing, closest as possible to that image of what people have of chickens roaming around a farmyard and people scattering scraps of food to them. Obviously you can't do that normally if you've got to provide to customers and weekly consistently, but I want to be as close as possible to that without jumping on the other side, which is actually you've got a big conventional shed with a few pop holes on. That's why this system is very unique. It's why it's a lot more expensive than in supermarkets, but I firmly believe that consumers are becoming more educated, more knowledgeable, and they know the difference between mass reared free range and extensively reared free range, and I think that is evident in the quality of the meat they eat. What we found and the farm here at Packington have so many similarities in common. We both very firmly believe in ethical production, sustainable production and high welfare production systems, and that's why we have such a good relationship between each other. Look what we found. I'm completely able to understand and sympathise with how we produce birds here, and as a consequence it means that their product they can stand by 100% and say that is the very best of what chicken farming can be.